Welcome back to MVM. I'm Ryan, and today I'm here with the deluxe edition of Set a Watch, bringing you a preview of this new Kickstarter game. Set a Watch is a game for 1 to 4 players where you will take on the role of adventurers searching for a lost tower. What you see in front of me is the beginnings of a game set up. The first thing you're going to do is choose 4 characters. Now, it doesn't matter how many players are playing the game, there will always be 4 characters at the table. Now, there are something like 8 characters to play with, so you're going to have a bunch that are not being used, and that gives the game a little bit of replayability. You're not going to have the same exact team of heroes every time. You'll notice a few things about the heroes on the board. First of all, each hero comes with a set of 5 adventure cards, of which you're only going to be using 3 to start the game. Also, every character has a damage die, which is either a D8 or a D6. Now, obviously, the higher the die, the more potential for damage they're going to be. But the lower die characters, the D6 characters, tend to have some abilities that make up for their lack of damage. And once everybody has picked their characters, they're actually going to start with one of their 3 abilities, randomly exhausted. If every character's ability cards are all flipped to the gray side, that's game over. So all your adventurers are exhausted, you lose the game. Now the next thing you'll notice in front of me is the board. And this is actually built into the box. The box unfolds with a magnetic top, and you have the board spread out here. Now the board has a spot for the location cards and also for the dice placement spots. In the middle, you'll see the campfire. Now, tending to this campfire is an important function of the game. If that campfire drops down to 0, you have to exhaust your characters to get that campfire back up. The campfire also dictates how many enemies you'll be able to see in the torchlight. Now, this location deck is pre-seeded before you start. There is always a Forbidden Tower card at the bottom. This is your destination. On top of that, you'll put 8 random location cards. The rest of the location cards, the ones that aren't used, go back inside the box. These could potentially be used later, and there are some options for branching your path. Now, these 8 cards plus the tower are going to dictate the rounds of the game. So the game is played over 9 rounds. Each round you enter a new location. You'll also notice a set of unhallowed cards. Now, this deck is the boss deck, and all of these cards are super powerful and can come into the game at random times. You're going to take one of these bosses and put them face down on the horde space of the game board. Now, monsters are going to continuously be added to this horde, and when you finally get to the tower, you're going to have to face that horde. So managing that horde so you're not completely overwhelmed by the time you get to the tower is a key part of the game. The rest of these boss cards that aren't used are simply set aside. They will come into play later. The last thing you do is build the monster deck. Now, you're only going to use 30 of the monsters included in the game, so you don't exactly know which monsters you're going to fight or which ones have been set aside. So you're not going to face the same 30 monsters every game. And these monsters will reshuffle and recycle, and so they will pop back up over and over again. So you take this deck of 30 cards, and then you pull out the summon cards. Now, these summon cards are going to exhaust a character's ability and summon one of those unhallowed bosses we talked about earlier. So these will change up your gameplay and have those boss monsters come out at random times. Now, once a boss monster is added into your deck, even if they're defeated, they just go to the discard pile and they're going to get shuffled back in. So will these summon cards. So these will consistently be shuffled in and consistently be summoning bosses. Now, you get to choose how many of these summon cards you want to play with. For an easy game, they recommend playing with 1 summon card and just shuffling that into the monster deck. If you want to challenge yourself, you can add in up to 3 more, but that is going to be a very difficult experience. You probably don't want to do that for your first couple games. Once the monster deck has been set, you're ready to start playing the game. Now, like I said earlier, the game is played over 9 rounds, with each round simulating a day in the life of your adventures. You're going to start every day by flipping over a new location and determining where you're going to go. The location will tell you how much firewood it used to move there. It also tells you how many monsters you're going to summon, and every location also has an ability that will have a random effect. Now, some of these effects can actually be positive and help you out. So once you reach that location, one player is going to sit back and maintain the camp, while the other characters set a watch around the camp, which is where the title of the game comes into play. Now, you'll notice we have the dice out here on the board. Everyone is going to roll their dice simultaneously and assign them back to their character sheets. Once all the dice are rolled, you get to decide which character is going to maintain the camp and which characters are going to fight. So everyone has to watch the camp twice over the course of the game, with that 9th round, which is the big horde battle at the tower, where everyone can participate. So no one has to watch the camp that last round. The character who decides to maintain the camp is going to take one of the rest tokens. And now in the deluxe edition, these tokens are wooden, as well as the fire tokens. Now in the standard edition, they're going to be cardboard, but the deluxe edition will still be available on the Kickstarter. So you take one of these wooden tokens and place it on the character, and that's going to show that they are maintaining the camp. Now, a character maintaining the camp automatically gets to rest, which means they take one of their exhausted abilities and flip it back over. Now they can't use that ability this round because they're sitting out the fight, but they will be able to use that in future turns. Then the character at camp is going to take their 3 dice and then assign them to the board. Now there are several locations on this camp board where you can place your dice. Now first of all, if you'll notice, the back side of your location is a spell book that has 3 potential spells: Vanquish, Bolster, and Seal. These 3 spells can be used to benefit your teammate or hurt your opponents. Now it takes doubles to activate one of those seals. Some of these spaces require an exact die roll, like check map and heal. If you have that exact roll, not higher, but that exact roll, you can place the die there and take that action. Check map allows you to look at the top card of the location deck and the top card of the unused location deck. You're going to draw both of these, look at them, and decide which one of these is going to be the better location. Like I said earlier, some of these locations are beneficial. So if you end up with one, you probably want to have that beneficial card at the top of the deck. The other card goes to the bottom of the unused locations, and you're not going to see that location again. The equip action allows you to place a die here. One character can take one of their ability cards and swap it out with their unused one. Now, if that ability was exhausted, the new ability also comes in exhausted. So you can't try to cheat the system by swapping out one of your exhausted cards. The heal ability lets any character anywhere flip one of their cards back to the ready side. You also have the ability to chop firewood. Every die placed here increases the firewood by 2, which will allow you to potentially level that fire up to the next highest level. You can also take a die and use it to scout ahead. Now you can do this 3 times, but the dice must be in ascending order. So I could place, a 1 and then an 8 and take that action twice. When you scout ahead, you get to look at the top 2 cards of this enemy deck and decide if you want to fight any of these monsters. If the monster's pretty easy, you can put them on top, you can leave them on the deck, you can even take them and bury them to the bottom. That ensures that you won't see that monster, at least for this combat. Every player board also has a special camp ability that can be used once per night and is unique to that character. Now, once all the camp actions have been taken, you move on to the enemy phase. So we're going to take that monster deck we seeded earlier and draw 7 of those cards, and we're going to lay them out in a tableau. Now, if you'll notice, our firelight is 2, so we can only see the first 2 monsters in the tableau. The rest are all going to be face down. Now, once the camp actions are done, the other players will get the chance to fight the monsters and try to defeat them. They can take their dice and assign them to their abilities, which you can do once per turn. Now, you can assign a die to an ability again. However, that exhausts the ability and it is no longer available until you heal. Or you could just take a die and deal a direct damage to a monster. As you fight and defeat these monsters, they'll go to the discard pile and new monsters will be revealed. Certain monsters have abilities that trigger when they are revealed, some have abilities that trigger when they get into the first position, and some have ongoing abilities that affect the entire game. Any monsters you don't defeat that round are going to do damage. Then you take those creatures and you add them to the horde. So you want to make sure to defeat as many of those monsters as you can. Everything that gets past you is not only exhausting cards, but it's going into that horde and coming back later. If you draw one of those summon cards, that summon card is immediately replaced with one of the big monsters, and that monster just jumps right into the battlefield. Now you have a giant unhallowed monster boss to contend with. And again, if those monster bosses escape, they're added to the horde as well. So as you can tell, there's a ton of potential to be adding cards to that horde. At the end of the game, when you finally get to that last location, that's the tower, you're going to still summon the normal amount of monsters, and then you're going to add everything that was in the horde to that deck as well. So you might end up with something like 10 or 11 monsters coming at you at the end of the game if you didn't manage that horde. Now, if you manage to survive the night, you move on to the next night, you reset the location, you assign someone else to the camp, and you kind of repeat this process. However, like I said earlier, that 9th round, you don't have to have someone tend to the fire. There is a huge horde coming at you, so you can have everybody fight the horde back. The game isn't too long. It's about an hour depending on how well you do. You could potentially become exhausted in some of the earlier locations, which is going to make for a shorter game, in which case you can just shuffle everything back up, maybe choose some new characters, switch around your character's abilities, and then try again. So there is a ton of variability in this game. You're not going to see every location, every monster. You're not going to use every ability and every character every game. So like any good co-op, the game is pretty hard. It's going to take some practice to beat. You're going to have to use teamwork. All of these characters' abilities really synergize with each other, and finding the best characters that work together and playing them to their strengths is going to be how you win the game. So that's an overview of Set a Watch from Manor Games. Hopefully this gave you a good idea of what to expect from the game. You can head over to the Kickstarter page where they'll talk about some of these things in a little more detail, and you can see what the campaign offers. As always, please like us on Facebook, subscribe here on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, leave comments and questions below. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.